I've just been thrilled, challenged, invigorated, informed by the 2 nights of this conference. You've heard from a wide range of people on a wide range of topics, experts, advocates, public servants who have responded to the challenges that face us, each with deep conviction, lots of courage and compassion, with competence on a range of topics, both respecting policy, but also the complexity of our political moment. Um, I'm sure some of the presentations have given expression to your own sentiments, and you have maybe quietly or out loud said your amens to it. Others may have challenged you with a different view that has been unsettling. Uh, I guess all the presentations, I would imagine, have given you much to consider. And that's good. We're at a point where we need to move together by learning together. Um, it's clear that we are in a moment of tremendous polarization, and the things that are pulling us apart are significant. It's not simply anecdotal. It's not something that we've just experienced in our day in and day out life, in our own bubbles, whether in our dorms or in our churches or campuses. But it's just statistically true. I was reading an article in the Atlantic called The Geography of Partisan Prejudice. Amanda Ripley and her colleagues compiled a series of studies that demonstrated that our partisanship now shows up both explicitly and implicitly in hiring, in our dating relationships, in who we marry, in our judgments of people's patriotism or compassion, and even in who we think is physically attractive. Just imagine that. Who we even think is attractive or unattractive is being informed by our political views. It has really infiltrated so much of the psyche in America. And that's often resulted in something profoundly polarizing. There was another study recently that had determined, I'm going to pick on Boston, my hometown for many years, that Boston was one of the most polarized places in America. 9 out of every 10 couples in the greater Boston area had married according to partisan leaning. And eight out of every 10 neighborhoods were politically homogenous. In other words, you move to a neighborhood and you can pretty much bank that those around you will have the same political views. This is tribalism, not just simply in a metaphorical sense, it is tribalism in a geographical sense. It is tribalism that is a part of home life. And this often means a level of intolerance that is reinforced. In fact, these studies have gone on further to indicate that sometimes it is the most educated among us that are the most polarized. By every metric, we are encountering a situation of tremendous social division. So, what can the church do? What can the people of God do? What can evangelicals do when the term evangelical itself is such a complicated name? Well, Christians have been in this situation before. The church was actually birthed in the moment of tremendous chaos, and we had to claim the kingship of Christ in that moment of chaos. The Roman Empire had precipitated the greatest mass migration of people the world had known up to that point. And local economic patterns had been transformed by the globalization made possible by this unprecedented system of highways and the common currency that the Roman Empire had enforced. And so urban centers rose and fell in some unique ways during this time of the Roman Empire. And of course, the political promise of peace that was given by the Roman Empire really masked all sorts of rebellions that were bursting forth in different parts of the Roman Empire. And there were famines, and there were natural disasters and plagues. It was a mess back then, and this was precisely the time that Jesus Christ birthed the church, and it experienced an explosive flourishing as there was a representation of the reality of God that was building bridges agents of reconciliation that brought together tribes that were at odds, that bridged differences between economic classes, gendered relationships, political divides, and the kinds of ethnic divisions that existed then were even more profound than the ones that exist today. And this was exactly the moment that the gospel had flourished. I think we're in such a moment now. We are in a generational inflection point. The demographic shifts in America, the social challenges, the evolution of worldviews, the kind of pluralistic society represents for us this inflection point. But it's a moment of tremendous opportunity. And what we have heard over the course of these last couple of days, conference evenings that we've had, is really a challenge to remain true to the kingship of Christ in our lives in the midst of all that chaos, to develop deeper and more thoughtful principles, moral principles that we can use to inform our policy commitments, and those policy commitments used to inform the ways that we engage. If I'm to add anything by way of a final comment, I would encourage us that it's not just our positions that are important. It is our posture. I think one of the greatest contributions that we as followers of Jesus can make in this moment of polarization is our priority to follow the kingship of Christ, our greatest allegiance to Christ in the midst of chaos. Not to give in to the cynicism of the moment, but to trust that we as God's people have been here before. But it's also to have this sense that our positions need to be matched by a posture, the way we conduct ourselves. And so I often think of and pray for God's people to live out James 1:19. My dear brothers and sisters, take note of this. Everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to be angry, because human anger does not produce the righteousness that God desires. And we have experienced a lot of that anger in the belief that this cycle of outrage could produce the kind of change that we all long for. And we know it doesn't. We're called to be quick to listen. Not just quick to listen so that we can rebut the other person's position, but quick to listen, so quick to listen that we end up being slow to speak because our time has been spent not formulating a rebuttal, but seeking to really understand the person's position that is different from ours. What would it look like to listen that well, to listen with humility, to love other people with a curiosity of their views, and to do what God calls us to do in Romans 12, to rejoice with those who rejoice and to weep with those who weep, to listen with humility, to love with curiosity, and to lament with solidarity, to lament in this sense of other people's pains, the community's pains that are different from my own community. I need to enter into that because that's what Christ calls us to do, to bridge these gaps. And then to lay down our lives sacrificially in the service of others, not primarily concerned to secure our own rights, but to secure the well-being of those who are our neighbors. I think doing this would be one of the most powerful witnesses that our country so desperately needs. It is a supernatural work of God that has been done before, that we desperately need to do now, that we at the NAE humbly ask God to use us in whatever space and time that God has given us to be faithful to that task. And it's one that I know that you are a part of this conference because you believe that as followers of Jesus, there is a better way, that we are called to this ministry of reconciliation, and that one of the most powerful witnesses that we would offer to those who are looking is this witness of building bridges and moving together, not to eliminate and gloss over the differences, but to bridge through the differences for this kind of common cause of good. So thank you for joining us for these two sessions. We trust that you have been stimulated in your thinking, but more than anything else, We trust that what has been presented with passion, with thoughtfulness, sometimes with a lot of challenge that is unsettling, has resulted in a desire to walk humbly with God, to be faithful in whatever God has called you to do, and to entrust your life and your witness as disciples of Jesus in this moment.